Again in studio, this time about different forms in world, but also how different forms of policy could actually build more and more food. To understand more and more food supplies from different forms of city together with safety, it's not easy, but also different forms of license that are checking that food is actually good enough. To understand World Food Conference, it's also not easy because of course that also is together with American Department of Agriculture, but also European Department of Simple Agriculture. To understand healthy life, it's not easy, especially in world. And if you measure that the world is Africa, that is not easy. The Food and Agriculture Organization, of course, have different form of design together with FAO in America, but also FAO in Europe. Of course, there are different forms of rights someone have for food, or different forms of simple form of benefits that humans with little status could have. Of course, the hunger is the worst thing in poverty and could cause death. If you do not get enough food, do not mess that together with nutrition or different forms of media that is actually promoting starvation or life. To understand, to be available, but also to understand different forms of simple class, it's not easy. You should know that female as a gender it's not easy and also difficult in every region, but also most of female also worship for different forms of religions. They also have a lot of issues together with food or the definition of it, but also to understand different forms of terms together with me to improve nutrition in world, but also in America and Europe, but also to understand simple forms of access for more and more people, maybe together with the media or network. To understand stability in media, it's very, very difficult, but also different forms of agency could support sustainability, especially if they are supported from various different safety funds. To understand depression together with funds, it's not easy, but also different forms of depressions occur where there is not enough food. To understand different forms of climate change, but also the sectors, it's not easy because the people that do not have food actually go to extremes usually. To understand those communities, it's not easy, but also to understand different forms of conditions that very known, sometimes actually built for people that have problem with them. To understand different forms of farmers around the world is not easy, but also the climate change that could occur any day, but also build a better security together with the tools. To understand agro ecosystems, it's not easy, but also international food policy together with different forms of microants institute. To understand that, we also estimate that there will be a lot of climate change, but also different forms of diversity, also on the knowledge, together with different potentials to build better food, but also the food would be available for more and more people. It's not easy to understand different forms of quality, but also there are also other political forms like tobacco related to food or other products that include nicotine or other drugs. Of course, it's not easy to build different forms of crypto to build better food for every type of situation in this world. To understand that food in poor areas is actually slightly more political than we think, but sometimes the politics are not important and they do nothing for community. So it's more and more important to build productivity in some port area. To understand different forms of corporations, it's not easy, but also to build different forms of policy for food. To understand the pricing in that security sector, it's not easy, but also to understand different forms of the world grocery. Of course, grocery is actually the most difficult from all the theme in this film. Sometimes film it's like life, and that's why it's also important to understand different forms of grocery actually build better quality in health. To understand that it's not easy because the grocery is very important also to maintain simplicity, but also to build simple forms of workforce together in every city in this world. To understand different forms of grocery might take some time, so do not think you could understand that in one day. Of course, there are also millions of meats that humans like to purchase every day, but do not be confused that meat is extreme healthy because the main thing is actually grocery. But if you think in very poor areas in this world, you should also think that they do not need only grocery, but also some vitamins and also some meats.